Tree Commission to order. We did have this morning a request from Ken Carper for an excused absence due to some work commitments. Is there a motion to excuse Mr. Carper's absence?
Motion to excuse.
Second.
Okay, if Mr. Taylor and with the motion and Mr. Senior with the second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Good. Okay, so Mr. Carper's absence is excused. Next up, we have the minutes from the May 6th meeting here for review and approval. I trust everybody's had a chance to look through those minutes. Any comments, corrections? Okay. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Move to approve.
Okay. And is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Mark, was that you on the motion?
Yes, it was me.
And the second was, I heard one voice. I saw Mr. Talavera's hand go up. Just want to make sure we get it. Okay, Mr. Taylor, Glenn Taylor. Okay. Proceeding with our new agenda order. We have a moment now for public comment. Wayne, has anyone signed up for public comment?
Mr. Chair, I see no comments in the chat. I've not received any by email. I'll ask Kelly Daniel if he's seen any come in through the stormwater email, Raleigh Stormwater email. Kelly, have you seen any?
No, I hadn't seen any, but if I do, I'll
Okay.
let you know.
Okay. No comments, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Next up is commission and staff updates. And I see that I'm in the hot seat here for the Commissioner of the Month introductions. So thanks for indulging me in this idea, everybody. Just to share a little bit about myself. My educational and professional background is in geology and hydrogeology. I've spent about half of my career working for the state Department of Environmental Quality or Environment and Natural Resources in groundwater protection programs of various types. And currently, and for the past almost 6 years, I've been working in more of the public health applications of groundwater at the Wake County Department of Environmental Services. I do like to point out to people that I'm not Wake County's representative on the SMAC. I am Evan Kane, homeowner at 2728 Van Dyke Avenue. My professional interests in stormwater stem from my interest in groundwater recharge and groundwater protection. Had some involvement at DEQ in redevelopment of the stormwater BMP manual, especially with regard to groundwater infiltration, stormwater infiltration practices. My personal interest stems from basically the legacy that we leave in terms of externalities that we push on to our neighbors and future generations and the planet itself. And making sure that we, make improvements in that direction. I think the 20th century was pretty rough in terms of stormwater impacts, and like to see what the city is doing here to move in the right direction on that. But at heart, I just loved playing in creeks as a kid and would love every child to have the opportunity to play in a clean creek and discover lots of things that there are to discover playing in creeks. So enough about me. Next up on the agenda, we have the Planning Commission and SMAC liaison report or comments. Mr. Stansel, I understand the Planning Commission did actually have some action related to stormwater recently. I don't know if you want to comment on that or any other Planning Commission items.
Mr. Chair, I don't have any comment to make at this time.
Okay. Wayne, I don't know if there's anything that you want to mention about text change that was endorsed or adopted by City Council this week
Yes.
regarding amenity areas and green stormwater infrastructure.
Correct. So at the Tuesday meeting, which is the same meeting, and we'll talk in a moment about the green GSI plan, there was a text change adopted by council that will provide more flexibility to incorporate green stormwater infrastructure into amenity areas. Previously, under the UDO, there had been a limit to only up to 10% of an amenity area could be used for green stormwater infrastructure. That limit was completely eliminated, and as much GSI can be incorporated into the amenity area as long as the intent of the amenity area is still being met. So if it's an open space sitting area, you'd have to incorporate GSI that could accommodate that type of use, for example. But we believe that's a significant change in the flexibility of incorporating GSI into development. So very good change. Kudos to Kevin Boyer for working with the planning department as part of that check change and getting that wording incorporated.
Thanks. It'll be interesting to see, reading through that text change. I can imagine maybe some hybrid areas where an outdoor seating area that's required as a part of an amenity is a piece of GSI. And as the old commercial goes, you're soaking in it or something. GSI might be all around people without them knowing.
Exactly.
I'll leave it in your court, Dwayne, to move on to staff updates.
Okay. I don't have any staff updates yet, but expect to have several next month. We are in the hiring process and have some very good movement and some tentative verbal acceptances on our senior plan review position. So I think we'll have some good news and announcement to make next month on that. And then moving into the high priority topics, I'll turn it over to Kevin Boyer, let him give a little bit of an update there on the DEQ Water Resources Development Grant that we're submitting to an application. Kevin?
Yes, thank you. We have one grant through this program already in stormwater and another through our Parks Department at Dix. The one that stormwater has is for partial funding for constructing the gravel, subsurface gravel wetland at Walnut Creek Wetland Park. This one is for a project that we're really managing as two projects in and within and just outside of Durant Nature Preserve. It's for restoring about a 600 foot section of stream and retrofitting or reconstructing an existing but defunct and unregulated stormwater control measure on private property. Very, very different kind of project for us to do this on private property in partnership with the property owner. We'll be requesting $200,000 in the grant out of a total budget of somewhere between $800,000 and $1 million, we think. And applications are due June 30th. We're on good track for making that.
And then Kevin, if you don't mind continuing on to the next item, maybe a quick update on the GSI plan that you and the chair presented to City Council.
Yes, Chairman Kane and I presented to City Council Tuesday of this week. presenting the plan that the commission endorsed at its May meeting. Was well received. There were one or two questions, but by and large, council members expressed their appreciation for the work, dedication, and referred it to the Growth and Natural Resources Committee, which meets fourth Tuesdays of the month, I believe, and probably will not meet in July because that's a bye month, by and large, for city council, except for the first council meeting, July 6th. So either we'll get on the agenda for July 22nd, or it will go to late August. We'll find that out soon and report back to you at the next meeting. But in any case, our next stop will be that committee.
Did you mean to say June 22nd?
If I didn't, I did mean to. Yes, the next meeting, scheduled meeting is June 22nd, and then we'll skip to late August.
And Mr. Chair, we have no projects to report under the notices prior to construction, so I will turn it back to you.
Okay, thanks. I'll just note regarding the plan to advance the use of GSI. Want to thank Mr. Boyer, Mr. Senior, and the Commission's GSI committee for all their hard work on that. Really good plan. I was very pleased to be able to present that to City Council, and excited about what that plan will bring for the city. Anyone else have any questions or comments on those topics? Okay. Moving right along ahead of schedule, we have Mr. Harcum here to present us an application for a Raleigh Rainwater Rewards project.
Evan, good to see everyone. I have a single project application today. The reimbursement request exceeds the $5,000 threshold amount and requiring SMAC approval, or commission review and approval. So we can jump right into that. Kelly, next slide, please. So the project location is 827 Brookside Drive. It's at the Pigeon House Branch watershed. And as you'll see in the backyard, this is Cemetery Branch that actually runs across the back of the property. The proposed project is 2 rain gardens, about 100 square feet each, that will treat a total roughly 2,000 square foot of roof runoff, which was pretty much their entire house. As stated, this is a somewhat of a tough site with location of this creek, and there is also some flood-prone soils in the backyard. And so their application has, they're requesting to put their rain gardens up outside of the buffer, outside of these areas that are problematic. And I'll show that on a future slide. So that's the main takeaway is they do plan on any improvements, keeping all improvements outside of the buffer area. Next slide, please. This is the backyard, pretty much standing in the buffer, looking back towards the house. They have plans to put the rain garden on each side of the house to capture, respectively, each side of the house's runoff. And I included a copy of the plat map here just to show some of the challenges of the site, where they have a sanitary sewer line and easement along the front of the property line. They're lot 4, by the way. Along the front of the property, you have an access sewer easement. That's my understanding, because it does not look like there's an active line there on the adjacent lot. And then you have the creek with respect to buffer along the back. And so all of those considerations were considered, or all those constraints were considered when applying and planning out this project. All right, next slide, please. Here is the cost breakdown And as you'll notice, or one thing to keep in mind is that this is really two rain gardens on one property. And so when you look at it through that lens, it does compare pretty closely to the cost of other rain garden projects. Also, as the commission is already aware, any project that is subject to review by the commission is required to get 3 bids prior to reimbursement. And so they have obtained 3 bids. The lowest bid is reflected here. Let me back up. There's 2 clear estimates. The 3rd bid, they never received an actual number. They've made contact, they did their due diligence, but they only received 2 actual numbers, and this reflects the low bid. And once again, the cost here, when really divided between the 2 rain gardens, is pretty comparable to other rain gardens we've seen in the past. And this project is eligible for 90% reimbursement, being located in the Pigeon House Branch watershed. Next slide, please. Here's the water quality metrics here. This project, it treats about 2,000 square feet. You'll see the nitrogen removal metric. And this project does not trigger the funding cap that was recommended by the commission in February. And I have more to point out in that regard in the next slide. Next slide, please. We'll see here how this project compares to other rain gardens. A couple things to take away here is this is 2 rain gardens as opposed to 1, which a lot of these comparables are single. Another thing to note is I've added, since the commission recommended the cap, a small plus sign on every project since then that has triggered the reimbursement cap. And if you notice, the ones around this one have. The main difference with this project is that it does have a 10-year maintenance term, which makes it more cost effective than a project that would only have a 5-year maintenance term, thus not triggering the cap. And you can see here how it compares to other projects. We are also seeing anecdotally, with small sample size over the last couple months, an increase in the cost of constructing these projects as well, as we're seeing pretty much across the construction industry as a whole. All right, next slide, please. This is fairly typical maintenance for both of these rain gardens, 10-year maintenance period as previously mentioned. Next slide, please. And I'll take any questions about this application or project.
Right. Any commission members with questions for Mr. Harcum? Surely there's someone.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
The 2 rain gardens, they're looking to put them in to alleviate an issue of standing water.
That hasn't been their direct reason. They live right on the bank of Cemetery Branch, and so I would chalk this project up as one where they're just super aware of where their runoff goes. It's going literally into their backyard and into the creek. So they've also, so I would say the biggest driver is just mitigating what makes it to that creek. They've also worked with, just add kind of to support that point, is they've since our meeting out there, I met with them and a landscape architect, and they've been put in contact with Mitch Woodward to do some plantings where I think the previous owners had removed some plantings in the buffer. And so they're going to do some plantings to reestablish some vegetation along that stream bank. So I think that's just their true motivation there.
Good. Okay. I'm satisfied.
You mentioned the 10-year maintenance period versus 5-year, and I apologize if I'm missing something obvious. What's the origin of the difference there?
Sure, Evan. So when the policy changed uh, to delegate authority to staff for projects $5,000 or less in reimbursement cost, one of the incentives for someone to move forward with a lower cost project would be a lower maintenance period. So projects that request $5,000 or less are only subject to a 5-year maintenance period. Anything beyond that $5,000 threshold automatically are required for the maximum 10-year maintenance period. There are some additional requirements once you get above the $30,000 request, which obviously aren't applicable here, but you start getting into land use restriction requirements. And then even beyond that, there's even more restrictions when you get into your really big projects. So it's tiered, and it's in a very digestible table in our policy. I'm more than happy to share as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the explanation, Justin. This is Mark. I was happy to see that was a 10-year. I thought the cost was kind of high until you pointed that out, and it brings it down to more reasonable cost per pound removed per year. So I think that's a good thing on this project.
Other comments from other commissioners? I have one additional, just looking at the history of this property, it does look like a fairly small house was originally present on the property, and that has been added on to significantly in the last couple of years. Do you have any feel for, how much impervious area was added in the last couple of years on this property?
Evan, I don't have the change or the net increase. I do know that they went through permitting because we had pretty extensive conversations about where their back porch touches the edge of the buffer, and they did pull out permits referencing that change. So I'm more than happy to get with stormwater billing and maybe even permitting to pull some of those numbers, but in front of me now, I don't have the history of that change.
Thanks. I don't think there's any issue in terms of compliance with the rainwater rewards program or policies, but it touches back on my concern about where these projects go in and the financial position of people who are able to afford to apply for this type of project, and some of the related impacts from that. I appreciate the interest from the homeowners in installing GSI and making good use of an existing developed property, but I do want to highlight and make sure we're aware that it appears there has been some increase in impervious surface, certainly within allowable limits and so forth, and permits have been pulled, but that is there, and often I think will be there on these projects. If anyone else has comments, please, or questions, please make them now. Would anyone like to make a motion on this particular project?
I move approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second the approval.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Looks like that's unanimous. Thank you. Right. Thank you, Justin, for that presentation and answering our questions. Next on our agenda, we have a presentation from Mr. Webb regarding drainage assistance projects. Looks like there's one project for us.
Yes, just gonna start sharing my screen and if I could.
Mr. Webb, is this your first presentation to us?
This is, and I wanted to share my screen first, before I just give a brief introduction as to who I am.
I'll let you do that.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Very excited and glad to be here. And it looks like I'm sharing. Can I get some sort of verbal confirmation, please, that you can see the screen?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commission, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a refresher as to who I am. I am Chaz Webb, and I am now overseeing the Drainage Assistance Program. You may recall that Drainage Assistance was under programs, and now it's gone to infrastructure, and when Dale moved into the administrator role for infrastructure, it left an opening for me to lead Drainage Assistance, so I've now assumed that role. And prior to this, I was in plan review for 3 years. So I'm looking forward to getting to know all of you virtual for now, but hopefully in person soon. So I'll be doing this presentation and the next presentation about the stream stabilization program. So just a presentation overview. We'll cover the approved and pending projects. Then we'll look at project map followed by requests. Then we'll cover funding overview and have time for recommendations and questions. So we've had 8 projects so far in this fiscal year 2021. These projects are listed here on the screen, as you can see. As long as
Chas,
yes.
You're dropping out a little bit for me.
I apologize.
It's getting a little quiet sometimes.
I apologize. It's raining quite a bit here. I don't know if my internet, can you hear me now better?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. We've had 8 projects approved this fiscal year, and you can see them listed here as well as their estimated costs. Next, we have the pending projects, and you can see that at the top of the list is 2324 Dahlgreen, and that is the project that is being proposed today. And then you can see the next 29 projects on the pending list. Next, we'll have a map. This is where 2324 Dahlgreen is located right here. Here's 540, and then here's Capitol Boulevard. So you can see just a little bit north of 540 and west of Capitol. And so moving on, there is a 15-inch pipe that runs the length of the property. It is RCP, and it also has some HDPE that was stuck into it. We believe this is the location where the sinkhole is located. You'll see on the next slide that there's a sinkhole, but it's mostly RCP. And I'll move on to some pictures. Here's the sinkhole. It's located about 12 feet from the foundation. This house right here, this right here is the 2324 Dahlgreen. This is a neighboring property. As you can see, there's not a whole lot of room. This is the pipe that runs between the houses. And so the main option that we're considering is remove and replace 90 linear feet of RCP. We'd like to keep it at RCP because most of the pipe is RCP. We will look at doing an open ditch as we get further away structures. As I understand, we try and do open ditches. It's a priority, but for now we'll try and keep it. 90 feet is about this range right here. So we're estimating that this project will be $68,000. That would leave $92,000 in the budget for this fiscal year 2021. That would carry over into fiscal year 2022, and we will come back this month so that we can get the fiscal year funds from this fiscal year approved, hopefully approved immediately. get some more projects for the fiscal 2022 year. So that concludes 23-24 all green. I'll welcome any questions or recommendations that you may have.
Thank you. Any commissioners have questions for Mr. Webb? Okay.
I don't have any questions, but this is Mark. I did want to make a comment. I checked with city staff earlier on this, didn't want to burn a bunch of time on it, but my understanding is that at some point, the owner or a previous owner extended that drainage system out there, and there may be a problem with the connection between previous drainage system and the added on drainage system that's causing that sinkhole, and they're going to investigate that to find out if it's something that can be repaired as opposed to replacing the whole thing. But it brings up a concern that I have, is looking at being effective with the city spending of funds where, the city is going to spend money to go out and fix a problem that a property owner created probably by doing a poor job of adding on to an existing drainage system. And I'm cautious about the city and the SMAC approving repairs to people's poor workmanship. It just kind of bothers me a little bit that we're fixing problems that other people created that was within their control as opposed to beyond their control, like upstream development or other issues that property owners can't control themselves. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention.
Thank you, Mark. Do we have any from the city staff? Do we have any verification of that history?
I do not know of any history myself, but I can. Dale, do you have anything you could add, possibly?
Yeah, there's no history that we're aware of. Much of these get done, I don't want to say under cover of darkness, but without permit approval or any other sort of permit process, as they were, previously and always sort of considered private drainage, and how we treat private drainage as being the private property owner's responsibility once it leaves the public right away. There are discussions and processes that we're trying to put in place for a stormwater infrastructure permit, which were, if things this were to be done in the future, they would need or the permit approval through development services to see that, the pipe size, if they were added onto, or the pipe material, or the the specifics of what would be done would need to be reviewed and approved, and some type of as-built documentation provided, so that we'd have a lot better record of what might have been done at a property throughout the years. But it's hard to do from a historical standpoint at this point.
I think that's an important factor that Mark brings up there. I guess once pipe is in the ground, it's hard to determine exactly the history there and who's responsible for mucking around with the infrastructure. But
so is that original drain pipe a part of city infrastructure, or was it a private drainage pipe?
So it's two part essentially. As with most subdivisions, especially this one built in the 90s, a developer would come in, develop the property, install, with the engineering design, install the drainage locations, the drainage structures within the public right of way, and then obviously carry a pipe or open ditch outside of the right of way. And the way that most plats are dedicated through the city only accepts responsibility and only considered public drainage if it's within the public right of way. And then once a pipe were to leave the public right of way, it would be a private pipe. So most often what we see in these situations, developer installed, streets were handed over to the city. City takes responsibility, ownership, maintenance for what's inside the right of way. What's outside the right of way and on private property is the private owner responsibility and considered private drainage. So
unless an easement has been granted to the city.
Unless a public drainage easement has been granted to the city, which is not sort of standard with the development of neighborhoods or subdivisions. Most of them are located within private drainage easements that are either dedicated to the property owner shown on the deed of easement or maybe sometimes the HOA.
But this project comes to us because they are impacted by public runoff.
Correct. So there is public runoff from Dahlgreen and the
And
two
then-
inlets there located.
This project would establish that city drainage easement onto the property, correct?
Absolutely.
To
Yeah.
maintain it.
Mhm.
Yeah. And in terms of the owner's reception of an open ditch within their property to replace some of the current pipe, do we have a read on that, or past history, or just does the city have something akin to eminent domain to say that you're going to do it that way?
Yeah, so the drainage assistance program unfortunately doesn't have eminent domain because it is voluntary. But what we can do and what we do is most people are okay with an open ditch until it starts maybe potentially impacting usable space or such. So it's sometimes a negotiation. There's probably not enough space in this scenario to have an open ditch between the two homes with the driveway locations. Without cutting out significant parts of their driveway. But once we get beyond the house, I think we're, can open that negotiation up about where we'd like to see it daylight from a cost perspective, and also from an environmental perspective. And at that point, with our best engineering judgment, if they did not like the outcome of that sort of sketch or plan, there's nothing that would require us to sort of a take it or leave it. We can do the project under this circumstance or we cannot.
Thanks. Any other commission comments? Questions? Okay. Thanks for that presentation. Do we have a motion on this project, drainage assistance project at 2324 Dahlgreen?
Motion to approve.
Motion from Mr. Taylor, second by Mr. Senior. All in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? Sorry, I've lost my, if anyone is voting opposed, I may not see you, so please speak up. Trying to get my view. I'm not hearing any opposition. So it sounds like it was unanimous. All right. Thank you, Mr. Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And back to you, Mr. Webb.
Yes, just give me 1 minute, please, to transition the presentations.
And I guess congratulations are in order.
Yes, that is the background to my experience. That was pre-pandemic, but yes, thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm very eager to hear about this. I know we have a number of people who've been on the drainage assistance project list for a long time due to stream stabilization issues. So looking forward to this update.
Thank you, and I appreciate I'll take that as a verbal confirmation. So,
yep.
Okay, this next presentation will be about a proposed stream stabilization program. We welcome please feel free to interrupt at any time. The goal, or ask any questions. The goal is to get your feedback. So an overview of the presentation, we'll go over the program objective, followed by the program need, followed by potential projects, get funding, then go through ownership and easements, followed by project priority and steps. So one of the things that I like to do when I'm always presenting is I like to review the mission statement at hand, because the mission statement is the core that defines who we are. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with this, but the Stormwater Management Division core mission is to preserve and protect life, support healthy natural resources, and complement sustainable growth within the Raleigh community. So we have the stream stabilization program that we are proposing. And how do we achieve that mission? Well, we do that through the program objective to support healthy natural resources by reducing sediment loss due to stream bank erosion by reestablishing a stream side riparian buffer. Now, why is this needed? Well, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, lists sediment as the most common pollutant in rivers, streams, lakes, and reservoirs. And we all know that natural erosion, it does occur, but there's also accelerated erosion from human land use. And that accounts for the remaining 70%. So we have natural erosion, 30%, and then we have human land use, that's 70%. If you look at this, you'll notice that this is mainly caused, we could say caused by development. And what's going on in Raleigh? What's the big thing that has occurred lately, the last couple of years in Raleigh? That's development. And what happens is it's led to 16 billion in environmental damage. So with all this development going on in Raleigh and all these stream sides that are eroding, there exists a need for a program. So let's look at some of the potential areas for this program. The areas highlighted in yellow is based off potential areas from drainage basin studies, identified areas of erosion. This is driven by the drainage basin studies. The next slide is driven by complaints from the Drainage Assistance Program. So just don't want to breeze through this too quickly, but I just want to give you an idea that, you know, generally speaking, it's sprawled out across the city. So next is the complaints, the drainage assistance complaints. And these green dots or green stars represent is the projects that would have qualified under the stream stabilization program that are under the drainage assistance program. Now, in total, there are 93 drainage assistance projects. 44 of them are considered stream restoration projects, and those 44 have a total estimated cost of $6 million. I do want to point out that only 7 of those ranked above the critical safety score of 50. So what that means is that there's this need for stream stabilization because there are 44 projects, but because they only 7 of them ranked had 50 safety protocol score higher, they weren't being ranked high on the drainage assistance priority model because that safety is a big part of that model. So qualifying projects. This program would mirror the existing drainage assistance criteria such that a project be located within the city of Raleigh. Project receives conveys public runoff. The project is compatible with the city's strategic plan. The petitioners, their utility fees and payments are current. And then additional criteria is active erosion of intermittent or perennial stream, and then a minimum 30-foot stream side buffer area. And the owner must designate a conservation easement to go with that 30-foot stream side buffer area. So how will this be funded? Well, there's $500,000 from the capital improvement program in the fiscal year 2022 proposed. We can also resource leveraging from other departments such as Raleigh Water or Parks, Recreation, Cultural Resources. And then there's a mitigation bank funding. That's currently a study that is underway, and we would look at getting essentially nutrient credits from other departments. So ownership, maintenance, and easements, permanent drainage easements to encompass work performed and access for future channel work. And the project will require a dedication of a conservation easement to be 30 feet from the top of the bank for buffer restoration and protection. And included in that will be access so that we can go ahead and access the easements. So remember when I talked about the mission? Well, the existing integrated stormwater prioritization model supports that mission, and it does so in 9 ways. Public safety.
I'm sorry, Chess, can I interrupt for just a second?
Yes, sir.
You mind stepping back for just a second to the funding slide? Okay. So these are options you're looking at currently. It has not been settled. And you mentioned currently having about $6 million worth of projects on the list.
Yes, and that I do want to point out that's just from the drainage complaints. That does not include the stream areas identified in the stream drainage basin studies.
Okay. Thanks. I apologize for the interruption in the middle of your slide there, but
definitely welcome it. Thank you. So back to supporting the mission, it does so in 9 ways: public safety and public health, flood hazard reduction, regulatory mandates and compliance, water quality benefits, watershed management benefits, stormwater infrastructure and asset management, community support and implementation complexity, resource leveraging and indirect community benefits, and the 4 that would be supported in this program is water quality benefits. So you can imagine that if you were taking, you had impervious in the buffer area and you replaced it with, wooded area, we get water quality benefits from that. Community support and implementation that comes from, some of these complaints that we would be addressing, the 44 that you saw on some previous slides. I mentioned the resource leveraging with parks, recreation, cultural resources, as well as city water. So project priority, these were some things that staff looked at. How do we prioritize? We want to create a model that's similar to the drainage systems priority model. And one of the first things we're going to look at, or I would say first, we would like to look at bank erosion height index. So if you think that you have a stream bank that's a certain height, there's a certain stabilization factor to that would be applied. Imagine a higher bank is more likely to be stable. Pollutant reduction, there's an equation that looks at how long of the stream that you are replacing, and that turns into a pollutant reduction. Buffer restoration, looking at the fact that if we take grass area, convert it to wooded area, or we take impervious area and convert it to wooded area, we are restoring the buffer. And then we look at impaired stream watersheds, and we could look at, such as Pigeon House or Swift Creek water supply watershed. So this is where I'm going to pause and welcome any of the commission input on this or anything that you've heard so far.
Got a question for you, Chaz. Regarding the 30-foot buffers, is that a requirement? So like for the stream in your picture here, there doesn't really appear to be room for that 30-foot buffer with this project, this stream be a project.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that question. Could you repeat that?
As far as the buffer requirements, the 30-foot buffer requirements, like in the picture, there's not really room to have a 30-foot wooded buffer in that picture. Would a stream of that nature not be incorporated in this sort of project?
Well, I think it would go down on the list, probably. It'd be lower on the prioritization. We would look at maybe why that's the case. If there's, if there's a structure that's nearby, obviously we don't want to move the structure, but then you can look at maybe that then in turn puts them higher on the drainage systems model because that's a safety factor. So their safety critical score will be higher, so maybe they go to the drainage systems model.
Yeah, I mean, this specific picture was a drainage assistance project, and it was completed or was about to be completed as a result of public safety. So this one, probably wouldn't qualify or wouldn't be a best fit for the 30-foot buffer in the stream stabilization program, but would be placed on the list and probably prioritized through the drainage assistance program. It's kind of without a definitive defining line. It kind of separates projects, stream erosion projects from the DA projects or the drainage assistance list, and stream stabilization projects, kind of a dividing line per se.
Okay, yeah, this is Mark. Thanks for that clarification. I had the same question that Katie had, and that explains it, that projects that are threatening a structure and can't create a 30-foot buffer or can't establish a 30-foot buffer would still be eligible under the drainage assistance, but other projects would be higher prioritized for the stream stabilization program. Gotcha. Good information.
Chas, I recognize that every project is going to need to be tailored to that particular stream and watershed conditions, but could you speak broadly to the methods of stream bank stabilization that might most commonly be used?
I'm going to defer to Dale on this one.
Yeah, I think we would try to be as minimally invasive and disruptive as we possibly could be. In this situation, if you were to look at the picture and assume that kind of the structure isn't there, it would probably result in just a rock toe and resloping of the bank, matting and stabilization. And if we could do even without a rock toe based on shear stresses, we might even do that. So the imbricated rock walls that we're typically using in drainage assistance projects to protect the structure, to remove the safety threat, would not be the intent, or would not be what we would be sort of defaulting to in this situation. We'd be more likely defaulting to something that slopes the bank back with a stable slope 3-to-1, matted, and then live stake and planted with a 30-foot conservation easement to let that area be reestablished and buffered.
So we're not heading towards hardening banks and armoring, that kind of thing.
Correct. Yeah, and the intent or the purpose in the program isn't property protection, but water quality improvements.
Okay, so if we think about the stream bank erosion as essentially the stream is adjusting to new hydraulic conditions and it's reshaping its banks to achieve steady state, stream bank stabilization by humans is a process of going in and accelerating that process, but doing it in a controlled manner that doesn't deliver all that sediment into the stream, but rather reshapes the stream bank, maybe moves that sediment to another place that can be kept from eroding. Is that fair characterization?
Yes.
So still striving to establish that new baseline condition, but under controlled conditions.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, thanks. These project priority bullets you've listed here, that's in addition to the existing prioritization model, essentially, or complementary to?
It would be its own separate model. Yes, sir.
Okay.
But I think we would start with some of the framework that the existing model has, some of the factors that were sort of highlighted on the previous, couple previous slides that we may be able to utilize as part of what we call maybe the stream stabilization model. And then probably, these priorities that are listed and whatever else we just, discussed or talk about would be, added on to that base model. And then, we'd probably give a lot more with the aim at preserving and protecting, water quality and reducing sediment, carrying larger weights and larger values to things like bank erosion height index and length of stabilization as key factors in determining, what the highest priority project might be.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's where really, welcome any input. I mean, I think at some point we're happy to come back and I don't say put some weights to some different priorities, but start to think about where our highest priority might be. Is that in the erosion potential as dictated by BHI or bank erosion height index, or is it more important that we might do length of stabilization, or kind of as was done, maybe not without a pairwise study, but was done previously when we first developed the integrated project prioritization model, sort of saying one or other it might be a little bit more important to help us flesh out or understand, as we start to prioritize these stabilization projects, which what's listed and anything else, what's the highest priority, what would carry the most weight. And if there's anything that we haven't sort of considered or are missing, that might be important to have in terms of dictating where we go to do these projects.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have recommendations for factors to consider here?
I mean, I think it's a great start. Go ahead and apply the criteria you've got, see how it works. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be a work in progress and things will be adjusted as the staff gets more experience with the projects and what they encounter in the real world. But I'd love to see you move forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Especially if we can get some credit for those for either nutrient reduction or stream restoration credit from the state. Be nice to recoup some of that effort.
So what's next?
Well, I'm so glad that you asked, because the next steps will be development of the program policy language. We're working through that. We'll develop the priority scoring model, and then we'll look at finalizing the easement language, and probably assign some weights, and if Dale agrees, maybe take them back to you guys to see if you agree with the weights.
And I presume you start with the existing drainage complaints as a means of testing that out?
Yes.
Try some scenarios there.
Yeah, it'd be a good
look at that. Take that. I'm sorry.
You go ahead, Chad. Sorry.
We would take the existing model and develop a framework from that.
Yeah, and then look at some of our 44 projects, based on being out there, looking at them, the field test to make sure that what we've kind of got weighted out makes the most sense for what priorities are coming out. As a basis for model development, we do want to look at a number of different areas as we start to really apply the program and start to look to where our first project might be. I think Chad showed you earlier the watershed studies or the basin studies, some of those locations. We also have a pretty hefty number of locations provided us by Raleigh Water and PRCR along Greenway trails. So we've got a good pool of locations where we can, once we get the policy program set up and the priority set up, and go out and look at them and start to do a project hopefully by the spring of next year.
Great. This is good work. I'm happy to see this moving forward, and imagine There's a lot of people on the list for drainage assistance that will eagerly look forward to implementation here.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner questions or comments at this time? All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Webb, Mr. Hyatt. Look forward to hearing from you again soon.
Yes, sir.
Good work. All right, we are continuing bit ahead of schedule here, so hopefully our interns are ready, fully caffeinated.
Mr. Chair, I think Scott Bryant is going to act as our moderator and introduce the interns. So if Scott, when you're ready.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Wayne. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Commission. Good afternoon, everyone. I am so excited to moderate this session. We have 4 outstanding interns. We've been very fortunate in these recent months to work with these 4 team members who are really part of our team now. We look forward to maintaining contact with them as they move forward with their schooling careers and then on to be community leaders. And they're already helping lead our community. Even in high school, we have a senior from high school amongst our interns as well as some college students. So it's a pleasure. Kelly, if we could pull up the presentation and we'll get started.
I need Colin to pass it and Chaz to pass the presenter role back to me.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you, Chaz. Thank you, Kelly.
Got it now.
It's all yours, Kelly.
While that is coming up, start some early introductions for Ethan, Sharanya, Peyton, and Suzanne, our interns. We'll tell more about them here in just a second. So excited with the work that they've done here in just a relative few weeks and a relative few months with us in Stormwater. A very special thanks right up front to our internship program leaders and who work with our youth. Kelly, if we could move to the next slide. Yeah, thank you. Work with our youth in Raleigh in so many ways, and that's Kathy Ector Cox and Nina Barrett. I know Kathy is on the call. Nina may be on the call as well. Great leaders for our youth, great leaders for our community. I believe Nina some years ago was a member of one of the part-time or intern type programs of the city, and now is a leader in her own right and helping to advance the goals of stewardship and environmental sustainability, resiliency, and so on. So I've been inspired and encouraged by Kathy and Nina and all of our interns, and I know that you all will as well. I'm glad we're ahead of schedule because we've got a lot of content. So all the interns can feel free to take about an hour each, and we'll go for about 4 hours. No, they've each got about 5 to 7 minutes or so presentation. So what we'll do, I'll do an introduction of each of them, which I'm very pleased to be able to do. And they'll give a brief 5 to 7 minute presentation and then would welcome any questions and comments from the commission members. This is just a great chance for our interns to meet you all and for you to meet them. And again, these are already leaders for us, and they're going to continue to lead Raleigh and beyond. So if we could go to the next slide, our first presenter is Ethan Clark. Ethan is graduating, I think next week. Ethan can correct me on that, from Broughton High School here in Raleigh. And he's been working with us in Stormwater actually since the beginning of the school year. So he's been with us throughout his senior year, doing some great work. He has interest in meteorology. He tells us that he's been interested in meteorology since elementary school. That's awesome, Ethan. Wow. In elementary school, I'm trying to think about what I was doing in elementary school. It is awesome. So he's going to tell us about his work, and he's been involved with a number of activities in support of Stormwater. So he's gonna start off, and then we'll take questions, comments, feedback from the commission, and then Sharanya, Peyton, and Suzanne, respectively. So we'll turn this over to Ethan. Welcome, Ethan. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Scott, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name's Ethan Clark, and I'm a senior at Broughton High School for one more week. And then Kelly, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So I'm going to be an incoming freshman in college at Penn State. I'll be majoring in meteorology and atmospheric sciences. I was born and raised in Raleigh, and as I said, I'll graduate next week from Brown. I'm also an intern meteorologist at WRAL here in Raleigh, and have been wanting to be a meteorologist since I was in elementary school. And I started and own my own weather page called North Carolina's Weather Authority on Facebook. If you've happened to heard of it or want to check it out, that's all of my content. So we'll go on to the next slide. So I started my internship in August with the city stormwater. Didn't really know what to expect, but it's been pretty cool. I've had a great experience with it. So I wanted to do mostly weather related. So I've helped provide some forecasting to stormwater staff and city staff, created some forecast briefings about incoming storm events, and then some other events we had. So I will show that on the next slide when I get to that. And I've worked with communications to make some social media posts. We went to a bunch of locations throughout the city, and I've seen several sites across the city regarding stormwater. And then we'll go to the next slide. And then here is some social media that I've posted with the city. This is on the stormwater Twitter, or the City of Raleigh's water Twitter page. We posted some stuff. This is me on the left, Walnut Creek. We went and installed saw some stormwater gauges and talked about how the city uses those to prepare for impacts. And then on the right, I went and saw one of the rovers we used to robots we used to go into the pipes and inspect the stormwater pipes. That was a very cool activity to get to work with stormwater staff and Raleigh water staff to talk about that. And I posted some more tweets. This is just one of the examples of the tweets that we saw. And the next slide, thanks. And then here's some of my personal social media posts. One of the first projects I did went to Lake Johnson, and we did some dam safety videos. So here's that. And then on the right is again the stream gauge, and this was me with Kelly and our USGS partner. And then as we continue on, here is some stormwater briefings that I provided to the city staff, especially within stormwater and within emergency management, about impacts and changes that are weather forecasting and impacts for briefings, mainly major events. When we have big flooding concerns, didn't have a hurricane came before I arrived. I actually rode that hurricane out for WREL on the coast. But we have a lot of heavy rain. It was one of our wettest winters ever to turn around to be our driest springs ever. So we have had 2 in a row. We're actually making up for most of the rain we've lost. And so we'll go to the next slide. And then here's some slides about some more additional slides about a flash flood guidance. So I showed some model data and then gave our 1 hour, and we have 2 hour and 3 hour flash flood guidance. This is some more parts of the slides that I presented. And then here's some more graphics that I've created for stormwater to kind of give an example of what's going to happen, including the severe weather potentials that we had. This is not present. This was an older back in November. And then this is from the Weather Prediction Center, shows the flooding guidance, and I'll just kind of conveyed that in an easier way to understand. And then here's some pictures from sites of Lake Johnson, and then when I was working with the stormwater team and City of Raleigh water team out at one of the sites to see how they inspect the pipes. And then as again, follow-up, so far I visited Lake Johnson, went to Walnut Creek and worked with USGS, seeing how the City of Raleigh inspects stormwater pipes. Just a few weeks ago, I also got to see how we take samples of the water to make sure it meets all the requirements. And then I've also been helping and learning with the flood early warning system, especially seeing how Kelly does all that. And also helped and find some locations for new rain gauges at Raleigh fire stations. It's a very cool project to get some more data on rain gauges throughout rainfall throughout the city, especially in the summer. We know very well that a storm could be one part of the city and somewhere else could see nothing. And then takeaways, it's reinforced how much weather relates to stormwater, which is a pretty good thing, especially it's been growing in the sector of the career sector, especially with city governments and other private sectors. I've learned all about stormwater, so I know pretty much almost everything there is to know about stormwater. Learned how to better predict flooding throughout the city, and then I look forward to the summer ahead. anyone has any questions or comments, I'd be happy to take them.
Thanks, Ethan.
Thank you so much, Ethan. Great job. You got the chance to work and we're continuing to work together with lots of our staff. I will miss some of the names for sure, but Kelly, Barbara, Kristen, our RDOT partners, Raleigh Water, you mentioned our partners with USGS, just a few. So in addition to leadership from Kathy and Nina, for our overall youth programs, our stormwater team has been very much involved. So thanks to all of my colleagues on the city staff who have been in support of your internship, Ethan, and all of our internships. And we'll mention the other team members as we go as well. Any questions for what's the forecast for this evening, Ethan? You're put you on the spot here. Give us the
Rain will continue for a few another few
Okay.
hours, and it should die out. We might have another round overnight, and then some rain in the morning. Then we should finally clear out for the weekend.
Awesome. Great job. Great job. Commission members, any questions or feedback from Ethan? We're so excited about his work. So pleased for him. He's getting ready to go here to Penn State University this fall, and I think in by around mid-August. Is that right, Ethan?
Yes, sir.
And we're going to keep in close contact. So lots of connections back here to Raleigh, North Carolina, and we just look forward to cheering you on. And Ethan, as you learn more and more things from meteorology and related that we can apply to stormwater, let us know, and we'll continue to improve our work. Thanks to you and others like you.
Yeah, this is Mark. I want to thank Ethan for his work and wish him the best at Penn State. Learn some more stuff and take that back and apply it. I think that's as Scott and others with Stormwater Raleigh have noted, the growing area is the prediction and sharing that information with the public. I think that's a big expectation, is people want to know when they may flood. Doing a better job prediction of that and letting people know. I think that's a big step in the public relations that stormwater is moving towards. And I think all the other communities need to do the same thing. So wherever you end up, keep that up.
Thank you.
Yeah, good luck, Ethan. And it's pleasing to me to see the progression here from applying meteorology to the typical weather forecast and how it's going to impact your golf or boating weekend to these societal problems of stormwater. I'm old enough to see the transition from the weatherman being a guy who's good at making bad jokes to real meteorologists, and I think this is a nice continuation of that progression in the profession. So I think you'll do well.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you, Ethan. Thank you so much. And thank you, Commission. Ethan, we'll stay in touch and our next meeting is next week. We'll see you soon.
Yes, thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Ethan. Great job. Our next presenter is Sharanya. Sharanya has been one of our Partnership Raleigh Community Climate Internship participants. I hope I got that right. Kathy's on the call, please. If I missed any part of that, let me know, Kathy. Kathy and Nina have been leading up that program. There's been a number of interns that have been engaged in this initial class of participants for the climate internship, and Sharanya and Peyton have been working with us in stormwater. So Sharanya finished up her freshman year at NC State University, go Pack, and she's going to tell us about her project where she's looked at flooding here in Raleigh, as well as in general, and looking at the considerations of equitability around flooding. So turn this over to Sharanya. Sharanya, welcome. It's great to have you here, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you for having me here today. I would also like to thank Ms. Nina and Ms. Kathy for leading this internship. It was a great experience. And I would also like to thank Mr. Scott Bryant and Mr. Wayne Miles for guiding me through this internship and basically helping me do my final project. Next slide, please. So a little introduction about myself. My name is Sharanya Srinivasan. I just finished my freshman year at North Carolina State University, and I will be going on to pursue a degree in environmental science and hopefully also a degree in political science. When I get older, or as a career choice, I would like to become an environmental lawyer because I am so passionate about environmental equity and environmental justice and activism and other topics like that. Next slide, please. So the project that I was assigned basically went around the idea of, are flood impacts equitable? So my stormwater program mentors were Mr. Wayne Miles and Mr. Scott Bryant, and I had to use programs such as ArcGIS and other flood maps to analyze equity among these different floodplain impacts. So as you can see in these images, it's just about like a couple of screenshots on the research that I've been doing, just like things I had factors that I had to take into account on floodplains impacts. So I would look at like septic tanks and I had to be like, okay, so is this impactful for floodplains or not impactful? So I had to look through small little details like that. And at the end, I had to compile a big report on whether there is equitability among floodwater impacts or if there's not. So the main question was, how can the city's stormwater program help create more equity and resilience when it comes to flood impact solutions? Next slide, please. So these were my preliminary findings. So I looked at the most flood-prone areas in this area, which were Crabtree Creek, Walnut Creek, and Neuse River. And my first thought was, okay, first let's figure out what the flood hazards are and which communities are being impacted the most. And as I went through and looked at the ArcGIS data for Crabtree, Walnut, and Neuse, I decided that maybe I should look at the communities itself. So I looked at communities that were located right on the floodplain and communities that were located away from the floodplain. I was wondering whether these were low-income communities that were impacted, or they were higher-income communities, or income had no correlation to this at all. So what I did was I chose to look at house value properties located on the floodplain or had a high risk of being flooded, and then house value properties that were located away from the floodplain and so had no risk of flooding. So let's start with Crabtree. So first, you can see that I focused on a street called Riverside. So this street had houses located near the floodplain and were deemed as high risk communities. And I focused on one house, and the house value of this was around like $114,000. And then I realized that house value also depends on square footage. So the higher the square footage, the higher the house value on the market. So I had to take into account square feet as well. So this particular house that I was looking at was 114,000 and had a square footage of 1,065. I realized that maybe to be a little more accurate and a little more specific, it would be helpful to look at dollar per square footage as well. And I got that number to be around $107 per square foot. And then I looked at a house that was completely away from the floodplain. This was a house on Saturn Court and had no flood risk at all. The house value for this one was $283,829 and had a square footage of 1,912. So the dollar per square foot amount for this one was around $148. So as you can see, there is a difference between dollar per square footage value. It may not seem like a lot, but when it does come to money, it obviously is a good amount. And I did this for multiple properties located on the streets and everything. And I did see that there was a good difference between these property values. Then I looked at Walnut and I did the same type of analysis, found a high risk property, found a low risk property or no risk property, and realized that there is a difference between square footage value for each property. So in conclusion, I stated that more lower cost houses or like lower income communities would be located near these higher flood risk areas. Obviously, lower income families are not going to be able to afford these higher priced houses. So they're going to look for lower income houses or lower priced houses. And these houses are unfortunately located near floodplains. Next slide, please. So these are the solutions that we came up with. One would just be to leave the floodplains untouched. The second one would be maybe add in more larger infrastructure. The third would be volunteer relocation of the communities or the most vulnerable communities. So let's talk about the first solution. So leaving the floodplains untouched would not be the most ideal solution because that's what's happening right now. And these communities are still going to be impacted and maybe even destroyed as flooding gets worse. The second solution would be to add in more larger infrastructure. After research done, it stated that pulleys and levee systems are not actually as reliable as they seem, and they're also more expensive. So you don't have like 100% guarantee that these communities are going to be safe from installing more infrastructure. The last one, which I think would be the most ideal, would be voluntary relocation of communities that are most vulnerable. These communities would be relocated to areas that are much better and a lower flood risk through a voluntary buyout program. I also think that it's important to maybe educate these communities on floodplain risks, because I'm pretty sure that they don't really know where they're living or what risks they have. So maybe educating them more on that would be better, because once this gets to an extreme, it will be too late. And we're known, and the government is known for taking action once it reaches a very extreme level. But with environmental hazards such as flooding, reaching an extreme is going to be too late. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, there is obviously still so much research to be done on this topic. Even after I finished my report, I still kept finding new things. And so it's really important to go into more detail, into more research. It is always important to consider equity when looking at environmental impacts, such as flooding, because I certainly did not know that flood impacts were this bad, and that the equity issue, there was a large equity issue. And I also learned so much through this internship, and I hopefully will be using this information in the future when I pursue my career goals. So next slide, please. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments?
Thank you, Taranya. Any questions for Taranya?
Hi, Sharanya. This is Nina Barrett. You have been an excellent intern in our partnership Raleigh Community Climate Internship Program. So I just want to give another kudos to you. You are very smart, phenomenal job, and very, very impressive work that you've done. Your findings and solutions are going to be very beneficial to policies that can be implemented throughout the city of Raleigh. So thank you. Great work.
Thank you.
I also wanted to echo that the same thing that Nina just said. Sharanya, absolutely amazing work. Thank you so much for all that you've done. I'm sure that it will have an impact on future decisions that the city is making concerning the floodplains, and what families, what income level families are living there. So thank you for your research and for your well thought out solutions. I thought it was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Thank you so much, Nina. A great process. This just an 8 to 10 week internship, and I'm amazed at Sharanya's and Peyton's and the others' work in just 8 to 10 weeks. And one thing that Sharanya, we had this conversation probably 10 times. There's so much here, and you reflected that. You captured a lot in just a couple of months, and there's so much. It's a topic that we're going to continue to work on in the city of Raleigh and really throughout the world. So you're going to help us to come up with great solutions for that are equitable, more resilient, and improve the community's quality of life in every way. So thank you for that. And Kathy and Nina, thank you again for joining and for the chance to be part of the climate internship program. Other questions or feedback for Sharanya?
I'm really intrigued by the research that you've done there, and it leads me to just more questions. Wish we had more time for discussion of things like the percentage of owner-occupied homes in these different flood risk zones, age of homes, the value of building permits issued in the recent years, and the how to gauge gentrification and things like that. And in particular, with your suggestion about voluntary relocation of communities, I think it's worth mentioning the example of Princeville, North Carolina. And you're nodding. I think it sounds like you're familiar with it, so
Yeah.
I won't preach to you about that. But that's it. All leads to more and more complex conversations and analysis. Thank you.
I thought that was interesting. Some of this mark again that Sharanya came up with. One of those is the importance of education. I think you've got a combination of the people that are buying homes in the floodplains, are typically lower income. They may not be as well informed as the people buying expensive homes, and so I think it's key to get the word out and make sure everybody knows that people do build and sell property in the floodplain, a lot of people, I've learned over the years, assume that, the cities won't let people build in the floodplains, and that's not the case. And so education is a big component, and hopefully we can keep improving upon that.
Great job, Sharanya. Thank you again. We look forward to keeping in touch with you, and please call upon us and help us give a chance to celebrate your ongoing successes. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you.
Great job. Okay, very good. Kelly, our next presenter, Peyton. Peyton is at Meredith, a senior at Meredith College here in Raleigh. And she is going to tell us about her work also under the climate internship program. And she has looked at GSI. We've already heard during this meeting on green stormwater infrastructure and the policies that council has now has accepted, and for the Raleigh community is us to continue to be a leader in GSI. Peyton has done some work on that and has got some ideas and feedback for us. And she worked very closely with Heather, Joyce, and Amy from our staff team. And so also want to acknowledge their support and engagement. Also, Brad and Ben were in strong support of Sharanya's work as well. So many, I'm sure I'm not catching everybody that has been involved, and I apologize for that, but it's always a team effort. Peyton, we'll turn this over to you.
So hi, my name's Peyton, like he said, and I'm a senior going into my last semester at Meredith this fall. I'm an environmental sustainability major and a biology minor, and I've always loved nature and the environment, and I'm looking to go to grad school for maybe like entomology, something to do with insects and conservation. I'm not very sure yet, but I am one of the lucky interns to work through the Partnership Raleigh Community Climate Internship Program. And like he said, I also worked with Heather Dutra, Joyce Gaffney, and Amy Farinelli. And you can go to the next slide. So I mainly worked to research and learn about green stormwater infrastructure. And it sounds like y'all already know what that is, but it's essentially defined as stormwater management that uses sustainable methods like plants and soil systems to mimic the natural flow of water through the ecosystem, cleaning debris and pollution out of the water before it's deposited into our waterways and other streams. And some examples of that you can find in Raleigh are rain gardens, bioretention areas, permeable pavement, wetlands, and green roofs, which you can see in the picture on the bottom right of the screen. And so you can go to the next slide. I had 4 major projects to work on. To begin, I worked on developing a way to track GSI within projects across Raleigh, specifically working with stormwater and roadway design and construction, as well as parks and recreation. And with the help from Heather, I drafted a written report proposing ways to track GSI. And through my research, I found that the use of a software called eBuilder would be a good investment for the city to work with. It is essentially a software that creates a streamlined project management and data collection process that can be used across all departments. And you can track things all the way from design to construction to completion. So you can track all aspects of a project, and you can enter data that can be directly sent to teams that need the data, like asset management teams, allowing for the information to be easily accessed and entered in GIS layers or other databases that ensures that the projects can be input and maintained by stormwater correctly. So using eBuilder would create kind of a standardized way to collect data. And then next, I worked with Joyce Gaffney to create an online tour of GSI projects throughout Raleigh. I used ArcGIS, where we developed an interactive online map that allows users to look through the different locations, pictures, and descriptions of the site, of the GSI site, and that can be accessed online easily. And kind of going along with that project, we also created plans for a citizen-based monitoring system that kind of connects with the online tour. So we worked to kind of design a sign that we could put at a GSI location, such as the Raleigh Union Station green roof, that has instructions on how to set up your phone and take a picture and upload that to social media so that we can kind of track how that location progresses over time and how the plants grow and how it changes. And so people could see that, as well as we could use that information for our research as well. And then finally, I worked with Amy Farinelli to research ways to make water quality projects more equitable. And through that, I came up with a written report describing research and recommendations that I gained through meetings with professionals and experts in the field, as well as research from other municipalities to see how they were incorporating equity in water quality projects. And some of the most notable ways that I found that we can include equity is through art, amenities, and community outreach. So for example, equitable amenities related to stormwater can include accessible signs at GSI structures that have the proper text, contrast, and font and visual elements that kind of are in compliance with the ADA, as well as that way allowing them to, be accessible to all people who want to view those signs. And through art, equitable art can be achieved through community members making up of a consulting panel that has diverse community members, allowing them to select an artist that they feel best represents their community and their neighborhoods, as well as making sure that the community is involved in the art that is being installed in the area. And finally, one of the most important aspects of equity I learned that could be achieved in water quality projects is community involvement. And specifically regarding building a good relationship with the community, allowing them to trust us, and kind of making it a two-way relationship, specifically regarding like compensation, kind of like Raleigh Rainwater Rewards. It's important to incentivize the community members to get involved in water quality projects, as well as compensate them for their hard work. So like I said, I researched other municipalities, and for example, Durham Soil and Water has a program that pays high school students to help with GSI projects, and Seattle, Washington has a program that allows residents who are willing to be kind of community ambassadors for their water utility division to be paid for that work. So these types of fiscal incentives are very important to help community members be able to partake in the local projects that directly impact them and their communities. And so on the next slides, I'm going to kind of walk you through some of the stuff that's on my online tour. So this is what you'll see if you open my GSI tour map. It's just a small dialog box that pops up and gives a bit of background information about GSI, as well as instructions on how to use and navigate the map. And behind it, you can see the map of Raleigh, as well as green boxes that allow you to zoom in and out, and other navigation aspects of the app, such as the legend. You can search for different tours, you can get directions, and other aspects that I will show on the next slide. So here you can see two pictures of some of the features on this tour. On the left, this box shows the details that pop up when you click on any given point. You can see the project's name, the project type, date of completion, any design or construction partners, as well as a link to the website or the information about that site. And you can also click on the other links below that to see pictures of the site as well. And although it's not shown, there's also a legend that describes what the colors of the points represent. So for example, the pink dots are bioretention areas, and I believe the green dot is a green roof, and the yellow is a rain garden, and so on. And then the photo on the right shows the feature that gets directions to and from different GSI points in the city. And it can also show you directions from other addresses that you enter. For example, you could put in your location and it'll show you the best way to get there. And it can show walking distance or driving distance as well. And then finally, on the next slide, this is an example of a visual monitoring project that has been installed in a different city. And so as you can see on the top of the picture, there's a little stand where someone can put their phone, rest their phone, and take a picture so that they're all kind of from the same angle and point of view. And there's an example text that we drafted that we could include on the sign, kind of describing what GSI is and why we would like citizens to take a picture and upload them. And then it also gives directions on how to take the picture and upload it online with a tag or a hashtag that we come up with. And then this photo would be posted online so that everybody could kind of see how it changes over time. And so I know that was a lot, but all in all, it was a very rewarding internship. And I'm so grateful for Heather and Joyce and Amy, as well as Mrs. Cox and Mrs. Ector Cox and Mrs. Barrett, sorry, for giving me this opportunity and kind of showing me what it's like to work in a local government. And yeah, I'm very grateful for this experience. So thank you.
Great job, Peyton. Great job. Amazing. I mean, 8 to 10 weeks. I mean, look, that's incredible. Another incredible project. That work is inspiring to us. Mr. Chair?
Thank you, Peyton. Is your interactive map available to the public online now?
It is, yes. I made a web application, so I believe you can just click. I'm not sure if it's like on a website or anything yet, but I have a link that anybody could click on that they can use.
Love it if somebody could share that in the chat, maybe.
Sure, yeah. I don't know if I am able to, but I have the link. I guess I could.
Or
I don't know.
maybe it could be distributed to SMAC members after if we can't get it in the chat right now.
Okay.
I have an idea for a biking tour of green stormwater infrastructure in Raleigh. Maybe put some coffee shops in there too.
This is incredible work, Peyton. Talk about community engagement, just having, residents or, be a part of this study is just an amazing accomplishment, I think, and something that the city of Raleigh really needs. So this is such a great inclusion to include in what we're doing as, again, for community engagement. Thank you so much for your work. Incredible.
There's some really good ideas there, Peyton. It's Mark, and I like Evan's idea, kind of combine these things. And in our neighborhood, we have the tour de coop where you go out and look at everybody's chicken coops that they've constructed in the yards. I think it'd be great to have a walking or a bike tour of the green stormwater infrastructure. And I really like the idea of the posts and taking pictures over time for other people to document. That's some pretty really interesting stuff. Just trying to think if they have tour de coop, what can we call the tour to green water stormwater? tour of storm. You know, become something creative.
Hi, Peyton. This is Nina. Great job. Just to echo what Scott said, you all did a lot in about 10 weeks. I'm just blown away. Phenomenal job. Very forward thinking in your approach. And as we can see in 2021 and with everything that's happened with the pandemic, it's very important for us to be very innovative in our approach, especially working in government. And you are already doing that, and you're doing a great job at that. So great job, Peyton. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peyton, this is Jamon Taylor. Fantastic job. I like how interactive it is. I look forward to receiving the website. And I like to throw out, instead of tour de coupe, maybe it's tour de swell, where we go through these stormwater swells.
And Scott, if I may take just a quick opportunity just to give a quick overview of Partnership Raleigh to the commissioners.
Yes,
very, very quickly. Partnership Raleigh is one of our City of Raleigh youth employment program. We launched in 2017 with funding for Bank of America, and Bank of America has been so generous in funding us for every year since 2017, including this year. And also this year, we got additional funding from Verizon. Partnership Raleigh, we provide internship opportunities, apprenticeship opportunities, and jobs for our older students, our older college students. And this is just an enhancement or an additional program from our Raleigh Summer Youth Employment Program, which some of you all may be familiar with. We provide these job opportunities working with City of Raleigh departments, nonprofits, and businesses here in Raleigh. So really, really excited about this last cohort of interns working with the Office of Sustainability. We are now hiring for our next 2 summer programs, working with Parks and Recreation and Cultural Resources. Again, a conservation a conservation focus for our intern, and working with community and schools, Wake County, to do tutoring for low-income kids over the summer. So this internship cohort was exceptional. And thank you all for all of your support in helping us do that. Primarily Scott Bryant and the wonderful departments like Stormwater, Transportation, Office of Sustainability, and others that helped us pull this program off.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for helping channel these talented people into valuable work.
Absolutely. It is it's been such a pleasure. It's a highlight of our work day to get a chance to interact with our future leaders, and they're already helping lead our community. So it's really inspiring to me and to us as a team. Kathy, thank you. Thank you, Nina, again as well. I am fortunate also to be serving with Kathy along with some other city staff members on a strategic plan initiative. So this is a very high priority, not just of stormwater, but for the city of Raleigh and for our community to advance, help our youth develop and advance and grow in their leadership and look for more in that regard. So we've got great programs in place already, and we're looking to further elevate those programs for our youth and for our community. So stay tuned for more on that. In fact, in stormwater, we were having discussions, and it's our intent and plans, and maybe Wayne could add some more to this, but we hope to, and we anticipate being able to maintain ongoing internship part-time opportunities going forward. So we're looking at that right now, and that's going to be just a great part of our program. And so we look to have more and more chances for youth to engage with us, and we learn from them, just like we're hearing here. So again, thanks to everybody involved with that. Great, Peyton, thank you once again. Great job. We will now like to introduce Suzanne. Suzanne is a graduate student at North Carolina State University, and she's been working with Justin and the water quality team on some equity considerations around the R3 program, the Raleigh Rainwater Rewards, as well as our illicit discharge detection and elimination program. So she's going to share some highlights there. Suzanne, thank you for working with us in stormwater, and we look forward to your presentation, and thanks for your leadership as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Harkin has been wonderful on supporting me on this. I did the report, I guess, fairly quickly in the latter part of the semester for school. Quick introduction, I am doing the second career thing. My background is bachelor's in English from William & Mary, master's in school counseling from University of Virginia, 13 years in that field. Plus I've also been a swim coach and managed the swim team off and on as well. So this is truly a second career. I'm a master's at the Climate Change and Society program, and I started it last year and will graduate from it this August. And I'm currently doing a summer internship for Wake County's Environmental Services Department. In fact, I have an office, I think, with an adjoining wall to Mr. Kane. So I'm in Raleigh as we speak. So quickly, what I wanted to do with Raleigh Rainwater Rewards, I'll just go over what the program is briefly, and then we'll get to the slides. The Raleigh Stormwater Quality Cost Share Program was rebranded as Raleigh Rainwater Rewards. It's been in existence since 2009 and has financially supported the installation of around 130 stormwater quality mitigation projects throughout the city. Participation is open to anyone who pays the stormwater fee. Projects are voluntary and cannot be used to meet any current stormwater requirements. Historically, single-family homeowners have represented the majority of participants, though nonprofits, faith groups, and businesses have participated as well. The program reimburses participants up to 90% of the cost of approved projects in impaired or targeted watersheds, and up to 75% of the costs in other watersheds. The program seeks to limit the volume of stormwater runoff that enters Raleigh's impaired streams, satisfy NPDES MS4 requirements, decrease erosion, mitigate nuisance flooding, and reduce the amount of pollutants and contamination in stormwater runoff throughout the city. Next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay. So data from the Raleigh Rainwater Rewards was assessed for the following characteristics: equity and project distribution by language, race, and income, location based on imperiled watersheds and impervious surfaces, and areas for improvement based on best practices as noted in the Water Research Foundation's report. And Raleigh did participate in that report as well. Next slide, please. So before I get into detail on these maps, quick background. We know that the population of Raleigh has been growing rapidly, as has all of Wake County, for the past 20 years and is expected to continue growing into the next decade. With this growth has come increased development for housing and businesses, meaning more impervious surfaces and a greater water use. In addition to the challenges associated with growth, the city is contending with rising temperatures and changing precipitation patterns as a result of climate change mean more flooding from intense storms on the one hand and more drought from longer dry spells on the other. Major cities, many of which have high percentages of impervious surface, have seen heat islands worsen over time. Often, according to an NPR report, these heat islands parallels low-income neighborhoods, a long-term result from discriminatory housing practices in the 1950s, when many white families were able to access home loans and leave cities, leaving poorer and often Black families in areas with little vegetation. While Raleigh is not as challenged by heat islands as some cities, these islands do exist. And the Raleigh Rainwater Rewards projects and additional programs aimed at mitigating impervious surface may be able to offset some of these temperature increases and amounts of impervious pavements. So when we look at these maps, these are a result of ArcGIS data, much of it pulled from the Census Bureau. And we can see that I analyzed the 131 projects. Some of these projects were considered integrated, meaning that they included multiple projects at a single address. For example, St. Ambrose Church and Raleigh Union Station have multiple projects. The Rainwater Rewards projects were distributed, as we found, pleasantly, similarly across income. And which you can see in the map on the left-hand side, the numbers on the census blocks represent the number of projects per census block. I've delineated predominantly black census blocks with a double crosshatch marks, and then predominantly Hispanic census blocks, of which there were just 5, according to the data that I was looking at, with single hash marks. So that was one thing that was interesting, that they were spread out that way. The map on the right shows predominantly impervious surface, and as we know, much of Raleigh is fairly well developed. This was a fairly conservative estimate, looking at primarily the darkest red areas on a Landsat map. And I crossed it over with where the projects are actually located. You can still see the predominantly Hispanic census blocks, the single crosshatch marks a bit north of city center, and then predominantly Black census blocks to the southeast of city center as well. And so according to the NPR report, Raleigh is not struggling as much with heat islands crossing over with its poorest communities. There are some census blocks within the red zones, which should be looked at closely. Fortunately, some of those do have rainwater rewards projects. Also, the areas in yellow outlined on the pink map represents the targeted and impaired watersheds. The one in the center is Pigeon House Branch Creek, which has the majority of projects by far. In the upper right corner of the map, we can see Perry Creek, which really doesn't have as many, but does have a fair share of impervious surface as well. Next slide, please. So distribution and looking at the data. The distribution of the Raleigh Rainwater Rewards projects was consistent across income levels until incomes reached around 120,000. at which point they increased a bit. There were an average of about 0.5 projects per census block. But when we reached that $120,000 mark, the number of projects doubled to 1 per census block. So while having a lower income was not necessarily a barrier to participation, having a high income did increase participation. And I think that the project, which Mr. Harcum discussed earlier, probably falls into that realm of a family probably making over 120,000, able to afford to expand the house, and also being in the Pigeon Branch Creek area, which has a higher reimbursement level. And one possible reason for this may be that families above that threshold are more familiar with hiring landscapers. They have more of a cushion to support the 10 to 25% household cost of participation. So there's things to think about there, but I think we were pleasantly surprised to see that both income and to most part race did not impact participation in the program as much as I think we were fearful it might have. So I think that speaks strongly to what Raleigh has done to date. Also, I looked at the IDDE inspection just because we had the data there, and what we found with it, and I'll discuss this with the Raleigh projects with Hispanic as well. Levels of inspection by census block was fairly equitable until we got to looking just at race issues, where it looks like the Hispanic blocks do have a higher rate of IDDE inspection. And part of the reason for looking at Hispanic blocks has been concern about language barriers, as much of the literature regarding Raleigh Rainwater Rewards wasn't put into Spanish until a couple of years ago. And so as you can see, the Hispanic blocks actually had 4 consults. So there has been interest expressed, but none of those projects came to fruition. So I think that's something to kind of consider in terms of looking at areas to target in general. So interesting data here, I think speaks highly of how Raleigh's done to date, and also shows areas to target in the future for looking at equity. Next slide, please. So the results for the types of projects and customers were also analyzed. Homeowners account for about 8% of all participants, and nonprofit, faith communities, and businesses account for about 10% each. The nonprofit faith communities included 4 churches, and the businesses did include 5 companies in the housing industry, which I think is a positive. The most popular projects were cisterns and rain gardens are considered the most efficient of the projects, and cisterns provide rainwater free of charge for use by both homeowners and businesses. Cisterns can be located on most properties and provide a means of participation for areas without available lands. They're fairly inexpensive and are familiar due to the growth of rain barrel use. Next slide, please. So in analyzing the project types and distribution by watershed, Pigeon Branch Creek had a greater share by far than any other watershed in the area. Perry Creek's weaker ranking shows where future efforts may want to be targeted, especially due to the amount of impervious surfaces in that watershed and its status as an imperiled and targeted watershed. And then the chart here on the right, I was trying to come up with a way to quantify what has been done to date. I think Montgomery County, Maryland looks at like amount of gallons or area or acres mitigated. And so in terms of trying to have a measurement stick of sorts, I tallied up the amount of square footage mitigated within each watershed, as well as number of gallons for which there were cisterns in each watershed as well. And I think this data kind of also shows where things are really spread out, because the number of projects doesn't always correspond directly with the amount mitigated. And just in looking at this, acreage wise, it was a total of just over 3 acres total mitigated. In terms of gallons, it was just over 90,000 gallons, I think. And if you think about a neighborhood pool, that's about the equivalent of a neighborhood pool that a homeowners association may run. So that gives you an idea of how much there is to catch during every rainstorm that could help out with. So that's something to look at as well. And I'm not sure what a better way is to quantify it, but I think that would be something to be considered in the future. Next slide, please. So to wrap up, this is a list of questions that came out of the Water Research Foundation's Best Practices Report. I did answer all of these questions in the report I've done for Mr. Harcum. And I can go over these if anyone has questions specifically about them. Raleigh is doing a lot well and has made, I think, great strides toward meeting the majority of these questions or ideas at some level, but I think there's probably more work that can be done. So that's kind of where we wrapped it up. If there's any questions, I will take them.
Great job, Suzanne. Questions from the commission? Feedback?
Thank you, Suzanne. That is really great work. We've been talking about equity in Raleigh Rainwater Rewards over the course of several meetings now. And I think we're going to be looking at including that in the work plan for the upcoming work plan later this fall when we're developing the commission's work plan there. And this is some really great foundation work for us to build on. I'm very excited about hearing all of this analysis. These questions provide a great framework too for us to consider as we move forward.
Thank you.
Suzanne, thank you for this presentation. On your slides, when you're talking about race, were you mapping race to geography? I guess you were mapping race to geography, historic geography, and not actual individuals. Would that be correct?
I mapped it to data I found by census block, so I wouldn't say it was historic. It was based on 2010 census. I think it's more general than maybe some census data was. I didn't have access to highly detailed data to input. I never used ArcGIS till January. So what I pulled in was based on other census maps I found, which broke down race. It was basically Black, white, and Hispanic, and Asian. So they may be more general. I'm not sure it's 100% match, but it should be fairly close. I think it's not far off the maps that I saw used by TJ Cog in some of their analyses.
Yeah, one question I have, and it's not for this meeting, and you may be able to answer it. I'm just wondering if the presence of certain city projects, Rainwater Rewards, or GSI speaks perhaps more to gentrification and newer residents than what I would call historic residents. You may or may not have an answer to that, which is why I use the term historic data, which would be census block data, and actually not how an individual would classify himself, herself, themselves.
Cutting out.
And I'm glad, this is Wayne, I'm glad to address that, Reverend Taylor. I think to your point, we have not tracked projects to demographics data specifically in the past, but that is something we are starting to look at doing so that we can better understand the distribution of our projects across socioeconomic and vulnerable communities and understand that better. So yes, and to Suzanne's credit, I think she's done a great job with the data she had, but we haven't collected a lot of that data in the past to give us the ability to do more detailed analysis.
Yeah, I think this is a starting point and just hopefully points the city in the right direction.
Yeah, this is Mark. I mean, it's a great eye opener. I had I've not seen any data like that, and I think it's great you collected that and started that as a base to work from, as Wayne and his staff start collecting more information. Is interesting. And then the hard part will be, okay, now we know what's going on. How do we modify that? How do we change it to the way we want it to work? What incentives can we produce to put the projects where they need to go and provide incentives? It's going to be challenging to see how we can tailor that program.
You might want to consider taking the data from Sharanya's project and combining it with yours. She used economic data, and you can see there's a dramatic change in use or utilization of the program when the income level goes beyond 100, was 100 to 120K household income. So it tells you that they're better able to afford the programs because there is a personal contribution. And maybe, or we should consider that the program have I would say an economic incentive where people below a certain income level, the personal participation portion is dropped or considerably lowered.
Yeah, I think that's something that Mr. Harcum had mentioned when we've been talking about this. And I don't know Raleigh data as well as y'all do. I live in Southern Pines. To know exactly where 120,000 falls in terms of a household income, which was what was used for this study. I do know that when I looked at TJ Cogs, they pretty much had it up to 129,000 and over, and then didn't break it down above that level. But I think that you can get into some interesting dynamics at that point, and that's definitely something to consider if you can boost it at a certain level. And then the other factor that I answered in some of the questions is how much of it is access driven, and the fact that people below a certain income level probably don't use landscapers or contractors. They might use a yard maintenance person, but not necessarily someone who could come in and be familiar with this kind of program and work with the city to implement it on their property. So yeah, I wonder where that is too, because I know enough about landscaping to hire someone for my family personally, but it's not something that I think a lot of families are necessarily going to consider or be comfortable with. So I think that might be part of how outreach can be done as well, is just who's trained to do it and who's already in those communities.
Well, I think it's a great, as Mark had said, eye opener, and really great foundational work for us to build on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thanks, everyone. We want to just celebrate this great work in you all, and we look forward to keeping in touch with you and in support of you all. Thanks for the chance to be a part of these internships. And again, we hope to have these many more opportunities like this going forward. And with that, thank you, Commission, and we will wrap up this session. Wayne may want to wrap up a few remarks in that regard too about this entire program and our vision going forward. But again, thanks everybody involved. It's been a pleasure. It will continue to be a pleasure. Great job to everybody.
Thank you, Scott.
Given the time, I'll just very briefly say thank you to all the interns. Excellent work. We appreciate the fresh perspective. And as Scott said, we do plan to continue an internship program as a result of this input and excellent work we've had from all of the interns. So thank you for your participation, and thank you to Nina and Kathy for helping us as well. Very, very important work, and we appreciate your partnership.
Hey, I have one more question about the internship program real quick. Are the interns paid?
That was mixed in this batch. Two of the interns were paid through the Partnership Raleigh Community Climate Program. Two of the interns were volunteers.
Okay.
We do plan to allocate funding for paid internships moving forward.
That's great. I'll just use this as a platform to say that paying interns increases access. So Thank you.
Agreed.
All right. Anybody have any other business to raise at this point? Commissioners? Okay. With that, thank everybody for the informative presentations and the dialogue today. And are we meeting in July, Wayne?
That is up to the commission, but typically we have met. Although if the commission would like to take a break, we could certainly entertain that as an option. Right now, or we could look at an alternate schedule. Right now, our meeting would be Thursday, July 1st, which is right before the long weekend. So if the commission would like to consider rescheduling that, or even canceling the July meeting and moving on to August, we'd be glad to accommodate that schedule as desired by the commission.
I know I, for one, will be out of the state through July 10th. I would be, amenable to having a rescheduled later meeting, but I think if Reverend Taylor is here, he's capable of running the meeting. So no need to hold it to cancel or reschedule on my account if everybody else or most other commission members are able to attend. Any issues there? Then I'm fine with, proceeding to have a July 1st meeting. Keep the ball rolling. Good work here.
Yeah, I'm good with that too. And I would note, just looking at my calendar, I'm going to be out in August, so I'll be looking for an excuse there. I'm going to be out with the family in the mountains in that week.
Okay. All right. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Mark. And do we have a second?
Second.
Reverend Taylor, thank you. All in favor? Okay. Looks like that's unanimous. Thanks again, staff, interns, and commission members. We'll see you in July.
Yeah, appreciate it. A lot of good work.
Thank you all.